Okay, on to episode 3, and we'll continue with this next paragraph. It says, whereas Paul Johnson, in the same article by the Elgin Courier, criticized the board members for not having enough integrity to vote to end the illegal practices on their own. The article does not identify which illegal activities Paul Johnson believes are being committed. However, the board is unaware of any illegal activities committed by the district or its employees or officers. And I'll comment on that before we go farther. Why are they unaware of any illegal activities committed by the district or employees or officers? Maybe because they've refused to let it be discussed in open session. My very first board meeting, I requested for them to review of the agency rules within the Bastrop Agricultural Guidelines Manual. No members seconded the motion. Here's one that they did pass that I suggested. Consideration and possible action on the review of Bastrop CAD's land classifications. And that did pass, so that was talked about on at the next meeting, and we'll discuss that in a minute. But another one they didn't talk about was consideration and possible action on Bastrop CAD's degree of intensity for beekeeping. No members seconded that motion. At the next meeting, I suggested, let's see the ones I suggested. Here's one. Consideration and possible action on setting productivity value for beekeeping. Mr. Johnson motioned to approve adding this to the agenda for the next regular meeting. No member seconded, so the item will not be added. Consideration and possible action on the Bastrop Central Appraisal District's policy of not providing full explanations for each reason for denial of an open space application. Mr. Johnson motioned to approve adding this to the agenda for the next regular meeting. No members seconded, so the item will not be added. Consideration of possible action on Bastrop Central Appraisal District's policy of not allowing homestead exemptions and open space appraisal on the same property at the same time. And nobody would agree to let that be publicly discussed. Another one was the Bastrop Central Appraisal District's published degree of intensity for beekeeping. No one agreed for that to be publicly discussed. The agency rules in the Agricultural Guidelines Manual that contain burdens, conditions, and restrictions that are in excess of statutory provisions. Nobody agreed that we should discuss that out in the public. So those are some, but there's more. This is probably the meeting where they did consider the land classifications. However, at this meeting, I had put together some documents. I sent them to the chairman to get put in everybody's packet, so they would have the documents that showed the problems. The chief appraiser, of course, did not put those documents on the agenda so everybody would have them. And when we started talking about it, I passed those out to the members. They were instructed and encouraged. Of course, I couldn't prevent them, but they were instructed and encouraged not to look at them. let me see if I can find this. Board agenda for future meetings. So uh, somebody else requested something here. I asked for setting the beekeeping productivity values to be discussed at the next meeting. Nobody agreed that we should discuss that out in the public where people might actually hear. And uh, I asked for a report from the chief appraiser on agency rules in the Bastrop CAD agricultural guidelines. I made that motion to add that to the next agenda for the next meeting. No members seconded, so the item will not be added. And it actually goes on, but I'll try to get some of these. But anyhow, I'll skip there. We've got 1, 2, 3 more board meetings minutes. I'm just reading off the board meeting minutes where I brought up something that they refused to discuss in public. So here, this statement: the board is unaware of any illegal activities committed by the district or its employees or officers. Well, they're unaware of it because they refused to let anybody tell them about it or even discuss could they possibly be illegal. Well, that's why they don't know about it. So I'll go to the next paragraph. Whereas Paul Johnson has made several claims that the district is acting in an illegal or fraudulent manner related to its policies for open space appraisal for beekeeping categories and valuation. And I'll go ahead and talk about what that was talking about. I did accuse them of doing illegal and fraudulent manner in handling beekeeping valuations. First, I'll show you the law. This is the property tax code. And when a chief appraiser sets a land classification, they have to give it a productivity value. And they calculate that productivity value by calculating the net to land. And that's just kind of a word that nobody in normal life really knows what it means. But in making that calculation, the chief appraiser shall calculate net to land by considering the income that would be due to the owner of the land under cash lease, share lease, or whatever lease arrangement is typical in that area for that category of land. So that's the law. They have to make that calculation by using lease rates. Well, here is their calculation. And oh, no, I've gone on something else. Here it is. Here's their calculation for bees, their net to land that here's the calculation they made. In fact, they have 2 columns for it. One, they did a calculation by productivity calculations. It says calculation by productivity calculations. And then this column is still for beehives, and it is the cash lease calculations. And they're required to use the lease rates. They're not allowed to use this other method. So I don't know why they have this other one here. But here are the lease rates for all these different years and for all these different types of land where beekeeping might happen. These are the lease rates for each of these years for each land classification. Well, I didn't think there were any land leased for income to the landowner for beekeeping. I couldn't believe that they said, here are the lease rates for these different years for all these different land categories. So I filed an open records request to get the uh, the data to see the leases that they were using to fill in those blanks here. Here's my request. Under the Beehive's cash lease calculations, you have cash lease numbers for 10 other land classifications. I'm requesting the data you use to determine those cash lease numbers for properties that would qualify for open space appraisal. In other words, the lease rate of money paid to the landowner for leasing his land for beekeeping, but only on properties where the bees were on the property year round and the land was more than 5 acres and less than 20 acres. So that's a public information request I made. It is request number 4. And here is their response. To my request number 4, specific documents subject to the request do not exist. So they've just confessed. They have these published, they've published these cash lease rates on that chart that you just saw. And that chart is a governmental document. And those numbers on it are false. They're made up. There were no cash leases. All those numbers were completely made up. So here's the penal code about tampering with a governmental record. And this chart that she put out and this publication that she has that puts the productivity values for all the different land classifications is a governmental record. A person commits an offense if he knowingly makes a false entry in or false alteration of a governmental record, or if he makes, presents, or uses any record, document, or thing with a knowledge of its falsity and with intent that it be taken as a genuine governmental record. And it's also an offense if they make, present, or use a governmental record with knowledge of its falsity. So they did definitely make a false entry in a governmental record. They just confessed that no leases exist that they got those lease rates off of. They did use that record and document with knowledge of its falsity and with the intent that it be taken as a genuine governmental record, as if it's true. And they made, presented, and used a governmental record with knowledge of its falsity. So when I had made claims that the district is acting in an illegal or fraudulent manner, that's what I'm talking about. I showed you the actual documents that are fraudulent. There are false lease rates in that governmental document, and putting them in that governmental document made that act illegal. Okay, so that's what I was talking about. Let's read the next paragraph. Whereas the board finds that Paul Johnson is currently involved in a lawsuit against the district claiming that his own property qualifies for open space appraisal for beekeeping activities. I'm not sure this makes sense. Whereas the board finds that Paul Johnson is currently involved in a lawsuit against the district claiming that his own property qualifies for open space appraisal for beekeeping activities. Well, I did have a lawsuit, or had filed a lawsuit claiming beekeeping on my own property, but that I have never complained about them affecting my own properties. The only thing I have ever complained about or any allegations I've made has been against the appraisal district using, uh, I've only made complaints against the policies and the procedures that they use, never about my own property. So that'll be enough for today. And we will stand by maybe and have another episode later.